You know what? I guarantee I get at least 8 of these correct.
Every club.
Every day.
The Global Sports Podcast Network.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Daily Newcastle podcast. My name is Michael Grahamslaw, and you might be thinking, what are we doing here on a Saturday? Well, technically, I'm recording this on Wednesday night, afternoon, should I say, before recording the podcast with Ian. So you might notice similar clothing. It's about 27 degrees, so it's going to be a hot one. But yes, we've got a podcast going out on Friday. My Indians will go out on Thursday. So I wanted to make sure that this goes out on Saturday morning, which does mean it's coming out after Liverpool versus Bournemouth. So when I undoubtedly slander Bournemouth and get everything wrong and then they come away victorious, this will sound atrocious, but it'll mean Liverpool have lost. So small wins for those trying to battle for the top four this season. But who cares? I'm going to go through my predicted table, starting at the bottom, then moving to the top. And basically let me know if you agree with what I say, let me know if you disagree, and we can see at the end of the season, how much I was right, how much I was wrong, because it's just a little bit of fun. Before I go into it, if you've got any predictions for the new season, maybe who's going to finish bottom, who a surprise package is going to be, maybe who you think is going to perform particularly poorly, maybe be the Tottenham or the Man United of this season, leave a comment, whether you're on Spotify, you watching on YouTube, anything, and just let me know. So, to start, in 20th position, I don't think there's any doubt. I am a Geordie, so we're going to have Sunderland there. The biggest spenders of all the newly promoted sides. I think even as a mag, you kind of have to say their ambition can't be questioned. They brought in 10 players, including Granit Xhaka, which is ultimately a very good signing. But they do have 24 points to make up on last season's automatic promotion sides, Burnley and Leeds. And both of those look heavy contenders for relegation. So those 10 new faces, I don't think there'll be enough personally. A lot of the other players that they brought in, other than Xhaka, are probably around similar level to what Burnley and Leeds already had. There's some good experience there in a lot of cases, but not really anyone that blows you away. I will say they've done really well to get 30 million out of Joe Bellingham. A player that never really looked anything special when I saw him in particular. I thought, oh yeah, he'll go for 15, 20 million because someone will take a risk. They managed to get 30 plus, so fair play. But survival looks like a huge task. I did say on a podcast when they got promoted, I could see them getting record low points. I definitely can't see that anymore. And I think they'll probably end up with about 20, 30 points next season. Granit Xhaka, great player, without a doubt their top player and the best signing they've made this season. If he's in top form, like we saw when Leverkusen went almost a full season unbeaten before losing in the Europa League final at Atlanta, then there's a small chance they stay up. But yeah, it's very slim. In 19th position, then you have the runners-up in the Championship, Burnley. They're back in the big time. Scott Parker is back in the big time, but he isn't a Premier League level manager in my opinion. Ex-Newcastle midfielder. I loved him when he was a player at the club, but stats say, and I'll be honest, the eye test is even more critical of Scott Parker. At Fulham, they were ridiculously bad defensively. At Bournemouth, well, he didn't last very long, did he? And I think at Burnley, I do think he'll last a couple of months. I think they'll give him the benefit of the doubt because they've got I think they play all of the last season's top 6 in the opening 10 games. So, they're expecting a tough start, but I don't think it gets any better for them at any point. I could probably see him being sacked before January and them looking to bring in just a manager. I'm not going to say Sam Allardyce. Obviously, those days are done. But a similar manager who they think will be able to just keep them in the league by playing a bit more defensive football. Let's be honest, getting promoted and losing your top goal scorer, which they've done in Josh Brownhill, is very tough, particularly when he's gone on a free to nobody. at this point. But permanent sign of Marcus Edwards, and they've also brought in Kyle Walker from Manchester City. So it's a great couple of signings for them. But 19th, I think, is where they'll finish. The final relegated side, I do think, will be Brentford. I think they've lost Thomas Frank, Christian Norgard, Brian Mbuemo, and it kind of looks, I don't want to say very likely, but it looks, a lot of people are saying it's almost certain that Johan Wissa is going to leave. Whether that ends up being to Newcastle, a club in Saudi Arabia, maybe even Tottenham, who knows? There's a little bit of time left, but it looks very likely that he'll leave, and they haven't got very long to bring in players of that calibre. For what it's worth, and it's probably worth very little to Brentford fans, but I'm actually quite impressed with what I've seen from Keith Andrews so far. When you consider he's a manager with no experience, when you watch the behind-the-scenes videos of him talking to players, he does just seem like he gets it. And from what I've seen, it looks like, when he gets that experience under his belt, he might be a very good manager. He's definitely a good people's person from what we've seen. Obviously, we haven't seen him angry or anything like that. So maybe it changes. But I think he'll fall short this season, and all the great work that Brentford have done, moving away from that reputation of being just a bus stop in Hounslow to a solid Premier League team, I think that'll finally come undone. And whether they come back or not, who knows? I hope they do. Like them, great club. But for me, I think they go down this year. And then in 17th, you've got the final promoted side, in my opinion. I see Leeds United surviving, and a lot of that is because of Elland Road. Similar to the Stadium of Light, really. I think Leeds and Sunderland will pick up a lot of their points at home, just because of the atmosphere that they can create. Now, as a Geordie, we all say, what, Sunderland's atmosphere is terrible. Now, honestly, it isn't. I don't think it holds a candle to St James's Park, but when you compare it to a lot of other teams in the league, the Stadium of Light does have a decent atmosphere when it's pumping. But Elland Road is just as volatile, and to be honest, they can create one of the best atmospheres in the league, and I think that'll help keep them up. I do think, well, I said in May, and I actually got quite a bit of stick from Leeds fans, because after saying this, I said that I thought they'd have to sack Daniel Farke to stay in the league. I still think that's the case, but I do think they'll do it halfway through the season. I think we'll get to November, December, and Leeds will realise, you know what, we've given you the chance, but we're not on track here. And I think when you look at that transfer window, they haven't brought in many attacking options. And anyone saying Dominic Calvert-Lewin right now, we were praying that he didn't come to Newcastle. I know Man United fans who were praying he didn't go there. I have Sunderland fans who I work with who were saying they would stay as far away from him as possible. He really isn't that good of a player, and he's certainly not an answer. But he is a hard worker, much like Sean Longstaff. And if that's the kind of philosophy that Daniel Farke wants to put, they're going to stay up by outworking everyone, then just maybe they have a chance. The signing that I think is the real difference maker is Anton Stach from Hoffenheim. If they sign a few more players of his calibre, they're definitely going to stay up. I was impressed by him in the Europa League last year. Don't be wrong, I'm not an avid watcher of the Bundesliga. I've only seen him a few times, but every time I have, I've been very impressed. And from what I've seen from Leeds in pre-season, it looks like they're impressed with him as well. Next up is Wolves. Yeah, Wolves. They're sitting 16th. For me, with the departures of Matthias Cunha, Ryan Aït-Nouri, they haven't really brought in any proven replacements. Their expectations are low. Maybe not as low as what Newcastle's was a week ago, where we all thought, oh no, what's going to happen? But yeah, after finishing 16th last season, losing two of your best players, they're going to do very well to do so again. The only thing for me, and a lot of people will say, oh, Matthias Cunha, that's a massive miss. If you watched Wolves last year without Cunha, Jorgen Strand-Larsen actually looked like such a better player. He was involved in the play a lot more when Cunha wasn't playing. The issue with that is in pre-season he has looked quite poor. So his goals will need to be there to keep them up, but he hasn't scored any in pre-season, so it's enough to get Wolves fans a little bit worried, in my opinion. They'll be in that relegation scrap, but I think they'll just survive. Purely down to Strand Larson and their midfield options in Andre and João Gomez. They're both impressive players, and I think they've got some solid midfield players. Maybe need a little bit more experience in there to go alongside those two. And then obviously you've got John Arias, who's just signed for the club, plays that centre attacking midfielder. Used to play in South America, played all right at the Club World Cup, but it's one of those where how much can you expect of someone coming straight from South America? You got the likes of Neymar and stuff who've done it well. This guy ain't Neymar. Simple as that. And I think there'll be a little bit of a gap between those 5 teams and the rest. I'm going to quickly go to the Bionique advert first of all, and then I'll go through the brief. I'll go through a brief description of the next 5 teams, and then I'll go through the top half.
Your body is unique, and Global Sports Podcast Network has partnered with Bionique, the world's most personalised supplements. Bionique provide 100% tailor-made supplements designed to deliver precisely what your body needs at exactly the right levels to optimize your health. No guessing. So click the link in the show notes. Use the code GSPN 2025 for 40% off your first month's subscription. Bionique. Don't settle for off-the-shelf solutions made for just anybody. Get what's right for you right now.
Excellent stuff. So back into my predictions. In 15th place, we have West Ham United. I'm really surprised that Graham Potter hasn't been backed at all, really, in this transfer window. And maybe I shouldn't be, considering how much West Ham tend to hate their owners at the moment. I don't think Graham Potter's a great manager anyways, but the loss of Mohamed Kudus is going to be horrendous for them. Lucas Paqueta, I'm expecting to have a good season now, all of the drama of his court cases behind him. And Jared Bowen is more than good enough to keep the Hammers up. What I would say is that, if they do lose Paqueta in the next couple of weeks, which many say they might, and then Jared Bowen is to pick up an injury, the Hammers are in trouble because they haven't made any. In fact, they've made one decent signing. And as much as I like Callum Wilson, it isn't him because he can't keep fit. El Hadj Malik Diouf from Slavia Prague looks like an excellent signing on that left side. And I think it's safe to say he hasn't had a professional game yet, but I think he'll have a better legacy in the Premier League than his namesake, El Hadj Diouf. And if he doesn't, well, he's done something seriously wrong. But in 14th, I've got Bournemouth, probably one of the biggest decliners from last season to this season. Obviously, Dean Huijsen, Zabani, Kyrgyz have all left. And then they've brought in Truffert and Diakite. Today, they've brought in Diakite for 34 million. They've both got a lot to prove. I think they'll be good enough to solidly survive, but that's because of the attack of Evan Nielsen, Justin Kluivert, Antoine Semenyo. They're pretty much good enough to keep any side in the Premier League, I think. Particularly because there is a gap between, I'd say, the bottom 5 and the rest of the league. In 13th, we have Fulham. I think they're a very solid mid-table side, but they haven't really signed anyone of note. Obviously, they've got a backup goalkeeper in, but Marco Silva's not going to be happy. Down as one of the better managers in the league, and for him not to be backed by a London club in particular in Fulham, I suppose the only positive is they haven't really lost anyone of note. And I used to say this a lot when Newcastle were doing nothing in transfer windows, but keeping Anthony Robinson is, for me, as good as a new signing. It looked certain he was off to Liverpool 4 months ago. So for him to still be at Fulham, great for them. And then in 12th, well, it's 12th again. Ole, ole, ole. It's Crystal Palace. FA Cup winners, Community Shield holders. Let's be honest, Palace are going to head into the season with a lot of confidence. But that transfer window hasn't been great. Bona Sosa and Walter Benitez have been brought in from the Eredivisie. Both had quality, but I don't really think it's enough. It's quality and depth. And although that is something that Palace seriously lack, I still think there's a lot of players in that squad who are going to get game time because of injuries, etc., who realistically shouldn't be anywhere near that team. If Eberechi Eze stays, that's another thing that's going to be a massive factor. What I'd say is that a starting 11 can be anybody. They're one of the teams that I worry about playing simply because of that counter-attacking presence they have. Mateta, Eze and Sarr up front is absolutely fantastic. But I think as well, they'll be focusing on the Europa Conference League this year because they've got a really good chance of winning that. And 3 trophies in a year almost. That's the stuff dreams are made of for Palace. And to be honest, I actually hope they do it. I quite like them as a club, despite the whole. There's a couple of fans online who are, let's say, not the nicest, but you have that with every club, and they're a proper club at Palace. So I hope they do it. The last of the bottom half is a club that I probably have the opposite feeling of Palace, but I do think they'll have a pretty good season. That's Everton. Moisey has them settled, difficult team to beat, but don't score a lot. I think the signing of Jack Grealish is going to be fantastic for them. He'll take a month or two of consistent game time to actually get going, but he'll be one hell of a threat on the break. And Everton might cause a lot of problems next season. Hopefully to other clubs, because usually it's just to Newcastle. I can't remember. Well, I can't remember the last time we played well at Goodison, but involves a certain Alexander Isak, and I don't think many people want to hear that. But righty-ho, we're on to the top half, and I've got Brighton sitting in 10th position. An encouraging first season for Fabian Herzler, but their squad, to me, actually looks a little bit weaker than it did last season. And I'm not just saying that because João Pedro's gone. New signing Maxim de Kuiper is, he looks fantastic on paper. I haven't seen a lot of him personally. All I know is with Fantasy Premier League, people don't shut up about him. But on paper, he does look really good. It'll be interesting to see how he transitions to the Premier League. A lot more defensive work is probably going to be needed. But Brighton will look really dangerous for him and Matoma on that left side. It might actually be one of the best left sides in English football behind Lewis Hall, Anthony Gordon, and actually that's it really. I'm joking. There are some of those decent ones in there as well. But yeah, I think it's going to be a real difficult one for Brighton. But considering they don't have Europe this year, while I think all the teams I have above them, except from one, do have European football, I genuinely think they could have a good season. And 10th, well, I think it'll be tight, but I think they'll just miss out on a European position this year. 9th. In 9th, I'm going Nottingham Forest. They narrowly missed out on the Champions League last year. You have to say it was a bit of a bottle job considering where they were. Although we did predict it on the pod, we did say they would drop down. And to be honest, I was actually quite surprised when it came true. I thought it was more blind hope than anything else from the Geordie standpoint, but turns out we were right. But yeah, I think Forest will finish 9th. Obviously, Palace's appeal means they're going to play Europa League football instead of the Conference League this season. They can definitely mount a threat in that competition, but I don't think they've got a very good chance of winning it. I think they'll get to maybe the quarterfinals, but because of that, they'll struggle significantly in the Premier League. I think they'll have a good end to the season, but they're not scoring goals in pre-season either. 1 goal scored in, I believe it's 7 games. Granted, their defensive record looks fantastic, but you're not going to do very well if you can't score goals. In 8th, I'm going to go for Spurs. I actually didn't originally have them down in 8th, but I do think, I think they're going to be a bit worse than I actually originally thought. Daniel Levy said that he thought, Daniel Levy said that if Thomas Frank doesn't need to win the Premier League this year, but he has to deliver soon. And I can't wait for his next stand-up gig to go on Netflix because that material is fantastic. Tottenham winning a Premier League, it's about as likely as Newcastle winning a Premier League under Steve Bruce. But yeah, in all seriousness, Spurs have a good squad, all in all. But only Mohamed Kudus has really improved them in regards to their signings, and Maddison's already injured for a chunk of the season. It looks like it's probably going to be another one of those campaigns where Tottenham gets heavily struck by injuries. Let's be honest, you can't balance the Champions League with domestic football very easily. But I'll say if they keep 2 players fit, they've got a great chance of doing well this season, and that's Christian Romero and Mickey van de Ven. I think in other positions on the pitch, their backups aren't horrendously bad, and they're good enough to stay in the top half. But I think in those centre-back positions, Romero and Mickey van de Ven are one of the best partnerships in the league when they do play together. And when you consider the record Tottenham had when Romero and van de Ven played together last year, when you consider they never really had a good run of playing alongside each other, it's very impressive, particularly when you look at how they play without them. But yeah, I think they've got a chance of getting back into Europe, but I do think these positions 10th down to 6th, maybe 5th, are going to be very tight. And then 7th, I've got Aston Villa. They're weaker on paper for me in comparison to last year, and I'm not impressed with the signings at all so far. Jacob Ramsey looks like he's on the way out. It looks like he's going to come to Newcastle. Very impressive player. I've said on this pod before, I really like him. I imagine he'll fit in more as a centre mid for us while he was playing more left wing for Aston Villa. That is 40 million of pure profit though, and that could be the difference for Aston Villa if they can bring in players using that pure profit. Every team around them's improved though, in my opinion, except them. If they can keep Morgan Rogers fit, I think they'll finish 7th, but if they don't, they could easily finish 8th, 9th, and could have a really bad season. But I think Unai Emery, even if those injuries do come, yeah, he's a great manager and should do enough to keep them in those spots. In 6th, this is probably going to... Well, actually, it won't be because it's coming out afterwards. I have Newcastle United. You'll have heard probably this on one of the other podcasts. But yeah, the Alexander Isak transfer saga hasn't helped us at all. But we actually look like having a solid transfer window. If we end up signing Jacob Ramsey and Johan Wissa, I do think that'll be the end of our transfer window there. I don't think Alexander Isak goes, and I do think he's reintegrated into the squad because the whole, I'll never play for you again doesn't make sense. And when I'll have to be honest, it takes a quick Google of his agent to see that this is all kind of mind games. I imagine both Liverpool and Newcastle, and Isak, are being played by the agent. But that's a completely different thing entirely. Imagine the agent said to Isak, Liverpool really want you, and he's gone, yeah, okay, absolutely. And then he's gone to Liverpool going, right, Isak's willing to do all this to come. You managed to get the balance down from 150 down to maybe 130, 120. And they've gone, that's a steal. So they've took that. But I think Ekitike coming into Liverpool, I think that was just kind of a sign that, yeah, they're happy to not do that business. I don't think Isak goes because of that. But I think he'll be reintegrated in October. I think September will be an awkward month. But with Johan Wissa up front for Newcastle, I do think they sort of steady that blow a little bit. I think it'll be a tough start of the season. I mean, they've got Villa and Liverpool, of course. But I think there'll be an agreement that Isak can leave next summer and Newcastle will hit their stride in October, then in November, into December as well. The biggest thing for Newcastle isn't keeping Alexander Isak either. It's keeping Sandro Tonali and Bruno Guimaraes fit. Look at Newcastle's record without Isak in comparison to what it is without Bruno. I can tell you it's a lot worse without Bruno Guimaraes. Those two, Guimaraes and Tonali, work so well as the 6 and the 8, and with Joe Linton or Jacob Ramsey next to them, it's genuinely one of the best midfields in the league. And And then obviously Malik Chow coming in at centre-back. If him and Botman can stay fit, then that's a great centre-back partnership by the looks of it. And just above Newcastle in 5th, I am going to annoy so many Geordies here, and I do apologise, but this is generally how I feel. I have Manchester United. I know, what the F. I don't like it, but it's how, as I say, it's how I feel. I think Mateus Cunha, Brian Mbeumo, and Benjamin Šeško, they're only going to bring a huge amount of goals to Manchester United. Let's be honest, it's a minimum of probably 40 between them, I think. And despite how arse their defence was, they did only concede like 10 goals more than the rest of the top 7, except from like Liverpool and Arsenal, I think. So yeah, I think they'll do enough to get top 5 and get Champions League next season, annoyingly. But I do think there'll be another pretty big gap between 5th and 4th. And I think Newcastle being in the Champions League is one of the reasons why we won't get Champions League again next season. I think it'll be just a bit too much for us. But yeah, huge gap between the top 4 and the rest. In 4th, I have world champions Chelsea, which just doesn't sound right, really. But that's what they are. I think they could easily push higher up the league with some of the signings that they've made, but I do think they'll struggle at the end of the season, maybe even in December, because of the sheer volume of games after the Club World Cup. And hopefully they do, and hopefully a number of teams who were in the Club World Cup suffer this season, and they go, right, we just can't do that again. In fact, no, they'll probably just take more games away from the EFL Cup. So maybe that won't work, but it's something's got to give. Yeah, Cole Palmer will start the campaign similar to how he started the last one. If he starts at how he finished the last one, they don't have much of a chance, but he's an incredible talent. And I think he'll have a great start of the season. João Pedro as well. It wasn't a signing that made too much sense for us, but it was one we were probably willing to make 50, 60 million, put that down on anyways, because he's that good of a player. Don't get me wrong, I don't like him, but I have to admit he's a very talented player. So that's Chelsea in 4th. And then the top 3 is kind of predictable, albeit, depending on your viewpoint, it could be any of the 3 in those top 3 positions. In 3rd, I'm going to say it's Manchester City, which is a bit of an interesting one because they made their signings very early in the window, which I think will mean they're quite well integrated into the side by the start of the season. I do think they'll start the season well. Haaland will have another 25-goal season. But the signings in 2025 haven't been great. Marmoush has been good. I do like Omar Marmoush, and Tijani Reinders, should I say, is probably the pick of the bunch from this window. I'm not a fan of Ait-Nouri at all. And I think it's a sign at the back that makes the defence worse. Don't be wrong, Ait-Nouri's probably much better from an attacking standpoint, but he can't defend. And I think everyone knows that, and that'll be targeted next season. The side's full of talent, but I do think they're going to leak a lot of goals. And here's the thing. You look at the squad players who didn't step up last year. They're going to need someone to step up, whether it's a Foden, a Doku, a Silvinho. I mean, Silvinho got 10 assists last season, so can't really ask for him to step up. But you're going to need those kind of players, at least one of them, to have a major, major improvement this year. And then second place, I think Arsenal finished there again. The signings of Martin Zubamendi and Victor Gyökeres are fantastic. But Miguel Arteta just can't get the job done when it comes to the latter stages of competitions. I don't know what it is, because when he first joined, it looked like that was where he was strongest in these competitions. But now it's a case of you're looking at it and going, well, actually, there's a lot of games you should have won or performed a lot better in. And I'm not saying you've bottled it, but it's coming close to that. And as a Newcastle fan, I know a lot about bottling things. Particularly being born around the 90s. I've heard about it for the last 29 years. But yeah, he's built a great project there, Mikel Arteta. And it feels like you need someone else to come in and hit that final stage. But if Bukayo Saka stays fit, I think they'll get closer than ever to winning that Premier League title, without winning it, obviously. And I think they'll fall short once again, but I think it'll be quite late in the season. And then, well, first place kind of gives it away. I think Liverpool will do it again, champions in back-to-back seasons. I hate the fan base, I hate the club, but I have to respect what they are. They've strengthened a lot, but I think, to be honest, I think they've made a few too many changes with 5 starters in their 11 being new players. I think they'll have a difficult start of the season, but I think they'll finish strong and they'll overtake Arsenal in the latter stages. I think early on, I think they'll score enough goals to outscore a lot of teams. I think we'll probably be victim to that when we play them. Will looks very dangerous, but I think they'll score just 1 or 2 more than us. And it'll be like the Kevin Keegan style of, we're just going to score more than you. Until they can shore up that defence. And, players can click, because we're not seeing exactly good defensive lines from them in pre-season or the Community Shield. Salah will be decent again, but there's no way he gets close to last season's numbers. Spoiler, nobody will. It was a freak season that'll probably won't happen for another 10 years. But yeah, still think Liverpool will win the league, and their fans will get even more arrogant and entitled about it. Probably demand Alexander Isak for £20 and a bag of Freddos. So yeah, that's my predictions for the season from Sunderland to Liverpool. Just to summarise, my final predictions for the Premier League are, starting with Liverpool in first, Arsenal in second, Manchester City in third, Chelsea in fourth, Man United in fifth, Newcastle United in sixth, Aston Villa in seventh, Spurs in eighth, Nottingham Forest in ninth, Brighton and Hove Albion in 10th, Everton in 11th, Crystal Palace in 12th, Fulham in 13th, Bournemouth in 14th, West Ham in 15th, Wolverhampton Wanderers in 16th, Leeds narrowly staying up in 17th, and the 3 relegated clubs, Brentford, Burnley and Sunderland. Do you agree with my Premier League predictions? Do you disagree? If so, tell me where I'm wrong, and we'll revisit at the end of the season. For now, that's it from me. As this goes out, Newcastle will get their campaign underway against Aston Villa. And well, I'll see you on the other side.
Every club. Every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.